Welcome to a new episode of The Perspective with Mike Sherbino and his guest co-host Julie Stautland. Well, everything seems to be a little foggy these days, from Blur's Day to the blues. Life as we know it has changed forever. As we continue in this state of limbo known as COVID-19, imagine just how much more difficult it is for our children. Today on the program, youth culture expert Jeff Watson, who began his journey in the popular boy band Distinct Nature and moved on to a career working with young people in film and television and organizations, shares how kids are coping through the challenges they face. As we go from a generation of stiff upper lippers to what Jeff says is teaching and encouraging kids to share and talk about their feelings of anxiety and stress, which sometimes results in the kids ruminating too much on their mental health without the proper tools.
Hey, we're glad you're with us today on The Perspective. And as we're looking forward to having Jeff Watson with us today, it seems very timely. It's also a sad commentary on a report that has come out last night, especially dealing with the mental well-being of our children. And Julie, I'm glad you're with us again today, but this was disarming when I read it this morning. Coming out of the States, and we know that Canada can't be far behind, they're saying that they're declaring a national pandemic crisis for children. And it says the pandemic has been brought on physical isolation, ongoing uncertainty, fear, grief. And they found that between March and October, mental health emergencies rose 24% for children. Get this, ages 5 to 11.
Oh, wow.
This is the time when kids are supposed to be enjoying life.
Yeah.
And 31% for children ages 12 to 17, and it goes on and on. And so I'm grieving this morning, and yet I came today to do the program, and I was feeling full of optimism, and I'm wrestling with those tensions because stuff is unraveling in the world. But I'm going to hold on to the fact that Jesus is still in control, and we're going to share with you about that incredible hope. But there is some reality check today. Julie, what have you come up with?
Well, we were looking at some things in the news, and one of the things I came across was McLean's article on party schools and talking about universities and what are the top party schools if you want to just go wild. The first one was St. Francis Xavier University. They spend about 10 and a half hours a week partying at that school.
Okay, that's more than I spend on my phone, but...
Maybe it's split between that, you never know. Then you've got Bishop's University at 8.5, and it goes down to like the 10th one at the University of New Brunswick is at 5. So between 5 and 10 hours of partying a week, I think that's quite a bit. And I know coming into the fall and kids getting back into school and getting together, and I know there was a big kickoff in the fall about we need to just party, and yet there's the issue still about social distancing and all those problems. But there's a tension there, trying to get back to normal.
So as I think about that, in the back of my mind, I'm thinking that has to relate to people's mental health.
Absolutely.
I'm going to talk later on in the program about purpose. I'm going to be talking to you with a good friend of mine, Mitch Hunter, who is fourth-year student at Brock University, and he's going to bring his spin on all of this and why he is a Jesus follower. I'm looking forward to that. What else do you have there?
Well, we're also looking at mentalhealthcommission.ca, and I saw that during COVID, they're saying youth that rated number 1, isolation and loneliness at 48%, and at number 2, school closures and remote learning at 33%, and the third one, limited access to mental health support at 9%. These are major top things that children have been dealing with through COVID and now.
So to help us today, as we begin the program, Julie's going to talk to a youth culture expert, Jeff Watson. We're looking forward to what Jeff is going to bring as he shares his vast experience working with children and youth in crisis.
Welcome, Jeff. Thank you so much for being with us this morning.
Glad to be here.
I know this is a heavy issue, so let's get right into it. You've invested in the well-being of kids most of your career. What types of mental health issues are they dealing with today? And have issues changed considerably over the years?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you look at children's mental health, I think it stays the same. It was for a long time. It was just different labels. Like kids always have dealt with sadness. Kids have always dealt with worry, fear, hyperactivity, loneliness, right? But I think in the last probably 5 years in particular, they've really not put labels on it, but really kind of defined it a little bit more. So, when you look at sadness, the adult equivalent might be depression or worry and fear. The adult equivalent could be anxiety. But I think we're going to talk about that a little bit more later. But I think it's those are the issues don't change. I think now there's more education around what it looks like in a clinical kind of framework.
Well, education is good. The more education we can get, the better. We need all the tools in our toolbox for sure.
Absolutely.
Now, are we giving children too many things to worry about when it comes to things like anxiety and stress labels, like you mentioned? Yeah,
I think mental health awareness is absolutely necessary. And I think it's, now more than ever, like one of the big buzz phrases for mental health and wellness is mental health belongs to everyone. Like, so I think everyone deals with mental health. It's just on a continuum. Some people are low end of the continuum. Some people are high end of the continuum. And, and the high end of the continuum might need medical intervention. So I think that's what's being taught. But I think the labels thing, I think kids get into, one thing I've seen in my travels, kids sometimes get into self-diagnosing and they actually say, hey, you're OCD. It looks like, you just knocked the door too many times, or, or you look like you're ADHD. And he could have just been having a happy moment. Like kids get excited, right?
Right.
And kids, kids do strange things. And I think it's important not to, it's knowledge is power for sure. But I think there's some worry in, kids taking things too seriously. I think I think even at an early age, I've seen it in younger kids. They're actually talking about all these different adult diagnoses. Do I think that they need to be spoken about that young? Probably not. I think
it's pretty heavy stuff for a young.
Yeah. So I think they're getting closer to, making it more palpable for younger kids and finding different ways to talk about it, which is good.
Yeah.
So
how has the overuse of technology impacted kids that you know?
Yeah, so we could talk about my own kids for starters. I think technology is, we've learned a lot of one thing. I'll just say this off the jump. We've learned a lot about technology in this time of COVID.
Oh, I agree.
I think adults have learned tons of stuff about technology during this time. But so how has technology impacted kids? For sure, it's, when you talk about addiction, right? Like that was another, thing that kids also deal with addiction, and I look at, addiction to video games. It's the same kind of dopamine that is firing through their brain that, that is present in other things, in other types of addictions. So, I think we've learned a lot about technology, and I think I don't know if it's so much of a, there's a little bit of a crisis, I think. I wouldn't call it a crisis. That's a strong word. But, I think there's a lot of overuse. I think it was good and bad in this time. Like a lot of parents would report that, kids were feeling isolated during COVID, but, they were able to get on, play video games and put on headsets and talk to their friends. And I think it's, it has its good points and bad points. Yeah. Social media did a lot. I think people, more time alone, you kind of press into social media more, which is not necessarily a good thing sometimes. So I think that happened. Even with kids, like my kids got into social media for the first time, during this time. So.
Wow. Well, I know for myself, I think that we've all felt the effects of isolation because of COVID, and yet statistics seem to be revealing that the children and youth have been hit the hardest by this. How are they dealing with it, like you said, and are you starting to see any good coping skills emerge? And with this, I want to bring a Mike as you answer this question.
I guess for me, you know, we have 5 children ourselves. I'm thankful they're growing up right now. At least I think that happens, Julie, most of the time, adult kids.
We all hope for it.
But I got grandchildren as well, and I was on a FaceTime with them last night and processing things. My question would be, do you have some practical things that parents need to be doing as we're still going through this pandemic to help the mental health of their children? I just leave it general. And how can we protect children more? You mentioned that in the beginning. They're just, so much technology is bombarding them. So 2 questions: what could parents do, and how do you protect your kids more? Maybe you're going to talk out of your own reference point.
Yeah, what can we do? I think there's a lot of great data out there, and there's a lot of great wisdom out there that's circulating. But you know, I mean, I think for sure, I mean, getting kids out of the house. I mean, it's I might sound like a broken record, and everybody's heard this before, but you know, getting kids active again, trying to encourage them to socialize outside of the home. You know, even if there's, you know, and now we're kind of, things have loosened up a little bit, and we can see people more. But you know, those are two main things, and it's kind of returning to how you know, when I grew up, it was all about, you know, being outside and you know, diversifying, you know, like at least I think technology is here to stay, but at least building in some other types of things into their lives.
I think that the point you're saying, diversifying, that really stood out to me. I think that's a good thing. We're not saying don't be involved in social media and inside things. We're just saying mix it up a little. I think that's a really good point you're making.
Mix it up.
I don't know what you guys think, but I'm kind of like hard and fast on some of this stuff. I just want to say, you know what, after 3 hours or 4 hours a week on your phone or on your tablet, that's it. Maybe an hour a day. I remember we used to do that with television. There was so much. Is that too old school? Is that too harsh?
Yeah, I think it's definitely a new day and age. Yeah, I've heard that from many parents. Many parents have said, "Well, we got to keep it down to a minimum, you know, or an hour or 2 hours." I think this world has evolved. We're living in a world. I mean, 10 years ago, the amount of technology that we use is nothing compared to what we're using now. Like, I mean, look what we're doing right now. We're talking on Zoom. I mean, this is so I think it's so ingrained in the fabric of our existence and daily life. I think it's so important to to allow space for it. And but it's also the types of technology. Like for instance, and you know, people might disagree with me, but we play, myself and my wife play video games with our kids. And I thought, well, if we can't beat them, let's join them. Yeah,
but then you see, you made that a family event. Then it's something that you're doing together as a family, and why not?
Yeah, it's returning. It's bringing back some family life, right?
Right.
Like typically, you see a lot of situations where when kids are playing video games, they're totally isolated from their family. They're just like, I'm gonna just stow away in my room, or I'll be in this other room, or I'm gonna put my headphones on. But I think we try to make it a family event, and the kids, like, they applaud us for it. They're like we probably don't play video games with them enough, you know. Like they ask us all the time. Like once they saw that we were open to it, they're like, "Hey, Dad, you want to play this with me?" And you know, so it's they'll at all hours. So I think one of my biggest things, even just with getting to know your kid and combating mental health is get into their worlds. Right. Be a part of their worlds. Like ask them about, I loved music growing up, and I always said, the more we learn about what our kids love, is the more we're going to learn about who our kids are.
Wow, that's a really good point. You're getting into their world and joining them. That's excellent. Thank you so much, Jeff, for joining us today.
Oh, my pleasure.
So thankful for that information. It's really helpful. Moving on to big kids now. Coming up, we hear from a university student in Southern Ontario about what's going on with some students letting loose. But first, what does God have to say about staying the course? Mike has the word next.
As we ponder what it means to stay the course, especially in these turbulent times, as we ponder what it means to be a parent to young children, as we ponder what it means to be a parent to high school students and college students, as I ponder what it means for myself to be a father to adult children, those things can just overwhelm us. And take with everything else, it is hard to stay on course. Maybe you're dealing with challenges at your work, maybe it's in your relationship, in your marriage, and we wonder, how can I just hold it all together? How do I stay on course? Well, maybe a lighter story would help, but I go back about 20 years ago when we were living in Nova Scotia. We traveled to Toronto for Christmas, and we were in a blinding snowstorm. We pulled in to a rest stop to gas up and for our 5 kids to go and do the washroom break. And, sometimes that could be an event in itself, but we won't go there. And anyways, as we came out and piled back into the van with the snow blowing, I was trying to figure out, which way do I turn? Do I go to the left? Do I go to the right? And I insisted, to my wife's dismay, that we go to the right. 20 minutes later, I realized that once again, she was right and I should have gone to the left. We were going in the wrong direction, and yet it seemed to be the right way. As we ponder what it means to go in the wrong direction, we need some guidance on how do we move in the right direction? How do we stay on course? And what is critical to staying on course is the decisions that you and I have to make. And so as we come again to the book of Philippians today, we're going to be focusing primarily on one little verse. And the verse is found in chapter 1, and it's verse 21, where Paul says, "For me to live is Christ, and to die is gain." It's a verse about purpose. It's a verse that encapsulates his heartbeat, the very passion that he was living for, even as he was waiting to die in a Roman prison. He's there on death row as he writes the book of Philippians. We need to choose Christ's purpose for ourselves. Have you thought about choosing what Christ wants for you? Could it be that the reason your life is upside down is because you have neglected to say, "Lord, I want you to be first"? That sounds like pretty radical. It sounds like way out there to actually me come to you and say, consider what Jesus is calling us to do. I want you to think about the words from the renowned author Rick Warren, who said this: "The purpose of your life is far greater than your own personal fulfillment, your peace of mind, or even your happiness. It's far greater than your family, your career, or even your wildest ambitions. If you were to know why you were placed on this planet, you must begin with God. You were born by His purpose and for His purpose." I love those words. I've often pondered them, because what happens many times that sidetracks us, that gets us off course, is when we think in the way that society wants to influence us about what actually is significant. We choose oftentimes the pathway to success as opposed to significance. But what we need to realize more than anything else is something that I came across in a book by Terry Wardle. It's called Identity Matters. I recommend it. And as a speaker, he says this: "Oftentimes, I am asked several basic questions when I come to a seminar or in a class, and it's about core longings. Inevitably, the first question is, where does the world encourage you to place your significance? And most quickly, and often with much energy, the answer comes from money, from jobs, from family, degrees, and appearance and titles. And then he says, I usually follow that question with a similar one about acceptance, security, purpose, and even love. And the answers do not change. You see, the world wants to encourage you to expend great amounts of time and energy to prove that you measure up. Because performance is a pathway to identity, as an exhausting strategy that only temporarily at best provides some satisfaction to our deepest longings. I want you to know that God's plan for core longings is not for performance, but for inheritance. You see, the difference between performance and inheritance is understanding that God loves you and He loves me, regardless of who we are, regardless of where we're at. And He accepts us when we come to Him and trust Him as our Savior and Lord. And when Paul understood that in his life, he could say through his own example, he says, choose to rejoice in Christ. We read in verse 18, as he talked about some of the challenges he'd been through, what then? Only that in every way, whether in pretense or in truth, Christ is proclaimed. And in that I rejoice. Yes, I will rejoice. You see, what ties in with all of those things in the choices that we make. If I choose Christ's purpose for my life, when I choose to rejoice in him, is that I am left to choose to follow Christ. And Paul says, as always, may Christ be honored in my body, whether by life or by death, for to me to live is Christ, and to die is gain. You know, when I corrected the direction we were going in that day on the van, after I listened to my wife, I realized, it was such a relief saying, as much as the snowstorm was blinding and all around, we're going in the right direction. Regardless of the snowstorm that you might be in today, when you choose to follow Christ, you can have the assurance that he will be your refuge and strength, that he is walking with you, that he is guiding you. I want to throw it over to Julie for a moment. As I've been processing those thoughts today, what stood out in your mind?
Dying to Christ. I have to say, in our society, we don't understand what that means. That we, in the me generation, the me society, we think, oh my goodness, it has to be what I want, the way I want to do it. And yet we don't realize if we really, really want to find our identity, really, really want to find purpose, we have to die to ourselves.
Such an important point. And dying to self means saying yes to Jesus, saying, Lord, I'm going to give up my agenda. I'm going to trust you. And at the end of the day, you and I are left with that question, who are we going to trust? Well, I'm excited today to have a person that I'm calling a good friend on the program today. He's a fourth-year political science major at Brock University. He's an incredible guitar player, plays circles around me. I think he's got 9 or 10 guitars. I'm envious. But he's here to talk about the situation on the campuses. I want to welcome Mitch Hunter. Mitch, thanks for being here.
Hi, Mike. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, as usual, we've had some interesting conversations about what's going on. And you've seen the escalating party scene. They're actually saying that in one of the universities, the average party time right now is 10 hours a week. That's more than a lot of people spend in classes. But talk to us about that, the sense of recklessness. What's your perception on it?
Sure. Well, we talk about, where is this coming from? Why are young people causing trouble like this? I think what's happened is over the last year and a half, young people, they just feel like they've been dumped on, just a sense of discouragement that we've all felt, where the government says, be scared of your friends and family. And young people went through that. And I think after a year and a half of that, now they're saying, you know what? Things are relaxing. Things are opening up. Why don't I look after myself a little bit? Why don't I blow off some steam? And I think there's even a piece there. You say, blow off some steam, go destroy property. Some element of selfishness, self-centeredness saying, why don't I figure out how I want to live? I'm going to live the way I want. And if society isn't going to say, here's the way we should be behaving in public, then people say, you know what? I had a tough year. Time to go crazy. I think that's what's happening.
Well, Mitch, let's take it a little further. I know you're not a medical doctor. You've tried to psychoanalyze me a few times and have failed. But
right.
So let's go. Describe people's emotional well-being on the campus. Like, what are you seeing? What are you hearing? Is there an underlying current?
Sure. Well, I think there is some sense of happiness to be back. People seem to be smiling a little bit because of that. But what's interesting, we've been back for about a month now. And I do notice that some of the, almost like people feel flat, just like they did before the pandemic. There's a feeling of emptiness. And I can see people sitting in class and they're saying, we're talking about all these things that we're pretending like this is the biggest deal and this is going to change my life. But almost like the pandemic ended, or at least it's on its way out. People come back to class, thought life was going to have this brand new meaning, and they're saying, nope, I'm still at Brock University. And Mike, it's interesting. You were talking about perspective, meaning earlier on in the program. And I think young people are now being forced to process these questions again as they show up back to university. They're waiting for a big change, and they're saying, life, how do I understand it? I still have to answer that question.
You know, as you mentioned that, Mitch, unashamedly, you are a professing follower of Jesus. Why did you make that choice to follow Jesus?
Well, when I was younger, maybe grade 8, sometime in high school, I said to myself, I don't want to just believe what my parents believe. I want to say, is this true? And so I had to go through a period of researching, and I read a lot of stuff. I listened to different people, but I came to the conclusion. I said, I believe Jesus is who he says he is. And once you come to that point where you say, I believe Jesus is the Son of God, I said, the only way to be right with God is to believe in him. And I'd say, how exciting is that? And so once you believe in Jesus, I say, I want to follow him. I can't think of any other way to find meaning and fulfillment and complete contentment other than Jesus.
Wow. You know, Julie, as I'm listening to Mitch share that, that's really what it's all about and what our program's all about. And Mitch, thank you for sharing today. But I want to ask you as our viewer and listener, why don't you choose today to follow Jesus? You could pray with us right now. You could say, Lord, I admit that I'm a sinner, just like Mitch did. I admit that I need your help. Will you come and be my Savior today? And if you're praying that prayer, write to me, mikesherbino.org. We want to encourage you.